What is good, Meat Boy? It's good to be back with the breakdowns and with the return of Meat Boy MMA in 2023. What better way to start the grill than with someone else who is making their long-awaited debut, Jimmy Flick, a guy with a lot of hype, right? A lot of people were super high on this guy before he straight up pulled a Barry Sanders and just retired in his prime, but he's back in this one and he's taking on the always tough Charles Johnson, aka Energy, Missouri's own, and shout out to an OG meathead, Brendan Pile. We know that this is your dog, Energy, so maybe he will show out for you in this one, Pile. But it's a tough fight against Jimmy Flick, even though we haven't seen him in a while. This was a guy who is 16-5 overall, and the last time we did see him, again, this was at the end of 2020. He absolutely smoked Cody Durden. He finished him with one of those patented flying triangle chokes of his, and this is a guy who is maybe even more known for his triangle chokes than like Bermudez, the Bermudez Triangle. Like this is a guy who everyone is afraid of Jimmy Flick's triangle, and perhaps he can catch Charles Johnson in it. But Charles Johnson historically has also been a guy who is difficult to finish, and Charles Johnson picked up a nice win most recently. And granted, that was against Zhalgas Zhamogulov, and that was a fight that was, I guess, kind of close. I mean, at least close enough for the judges to give the nod to Energy, but most people thought Zhalgas won that fight. Zhalgas straight up rage quit, retired in the cage upon hearing the verdict. He was out on MMA, and it's interesting that he's taken on a guy who just fake retired himself in Jimmy Flick. So both these guys are former LFA flyweight champs. Should be an interesting contest, but Jimmy Flick is coming as a near 3-1 dog, plus 280, to Energy, who's minus 340. Have you seen enough from Energy to justify him at an over 3-1 favorite position? Is it too much too soon again for Jimmy Flick's return, or at plus 300, is Jimmy Flick going to be the guy that we saw when he last fought 2.5 years ago and makes light work of Energy? Who are you taking in this one? It's an interesting matchup.
Yeah, no, this is a very fun matchup. Very interesting to see Jimmy is out of retirement, so happy to see that. He gets his UFC debut, gets a dub, and he retires on top. But now he's back, and the O and the UFC is at risk. But I think he's going to keep the undefeated record in the UFC. He has not lost in the UFC. In other organizations, he has. But I think he's actually going to get the sub early and often. I don't know if Johnson is ready for the newly revived and hungry Jimmy Flick. I think he's going to come out there. He's going for gold. Clearly some new spark has got him back into the game. So that's what I'm kind of banking on. I really like these odds too. And if you remember all the fights, even in his amateur career, his amateur pro career, kid's a savage, so he should get this done if it is still the same Flick.
Yeah, right. If he is the same guy, and if you do your deep dives, you check to see what he's looking like on the socials, and Jimmy Flick seems to be stringing together a lot of solid workouts. Seems like he's really back on the singularity of focus grind that this sport definitely requires. And if, like you said, if the brick returns and looks like he did when we saw him most recently against Cody Durden, then I think this could be a tough night for Energy. And I'm interested to see the line movement on this one. Energy opened as around a minus 450 favorite, and it's already narrowed to about minus 300. So there's a lot of sharp action coming in on Jimmy Flick, and he's narrowed from about plus 350 to about plus 380 himself. So should be interested to, or to plus 280 himself, excuse me. So should be interesting to see if the line continues to move in this one. I kind of think that it might. So I like Jimmy Flick as well as a near 3-1, probably closing as a 2-1 underdog. And one thing that I found interesting about this one, Meat Boy, was 48% of Tapology is also rolling with the brick. 52% rolling with Energy Charles Johnson. So rarely do you see a 3-1 underdog getting almost a majority of the Tapology votes. So seems like a lot of people are still thinking that Jimmy Flick at least has enough to take out Charles Johnson in his comeback fight. But again, 48% rolling with Jimmy. Most is copper for that sub. 52% rolling with Johnson, and most is by decision. Do you buy that? Do you think that Jimmy Flick, if and when he gets this done, it's by submission, or any chances goes the distance? How do you see Jimmy Flick winning this one if he does?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a finish. But these guys, they are very small, and typically it's harder for these guys to go out than versus the heavyweights. So it wouldn't surprise me if this does go decision, but I like the finish in this one for Mr. Flick.
Yeah, one might hope for sure. Definitely going to be getting juicy odds, but I mean, again, at plus 280, plus 300, that seems juicy enough for me. So I'm be rolling Jimmy Flick. I think he gets this one done by decision. I don't think that Charles Johnson can finish the brick. I think that if Charles Johnson gets this done, I do agree with the majority of Tapology. I think it would be by decision. But ultimately, I see this one being a close back and forth fight. Perhaps Charles Johnson wins the first, Jimmy wins the second, and then it's a winner take all third round. And I like Jimmy Flick to come back, cement himself back in this division, maybe even pick up a performance bonus and pay off all those hobby boxes that he was swooping throughout the last couple of years. And the return of the brick happens. Any last thoughts?
No, yeah, 100%. Like I said, a little fire has risen in his belly, and it might be those hobby box he splooged on, and he might be in debt. 2023, he's got to get out of it. So we'll see. But throw in the comments who you taking, Mr. Flick or Inner G.